Apologies for that. I don't know what the fucking problem is. Like, you wanted me to use this software that, I mean, this software is literally fucking terrible. Like, let me just add that disclaimer. Called like Restream.io or some bullshit. I mean, the idea, like, oh, hold on, it looks like I've got a little echo here too. I need to go ahead and kill that. The idea is, you know, to have it streamed on YouTube. It's just better for everybody. It's better for the replays. But yeah, I guess, you know, fuck YouTube. It's all good. It's all good. All good. You know, we're going to get on with it here. So I think maybe the first thing, you know, we should talk about, because we do like to open up discussing a bit of psychology. It's just like the general sentiment around the market right now. It seems to be really, really shitty. I mean, really, really shitty, right? People aren't really sure what's going on, you know? Is it over? Is it not over? You know, am I a fool? Should I have sold? If I sell now, am I gonna sell the bottom? I wish I'd sold 3 days ago. You know, those kinds of things. You know, I will say, on the way to glory, there's all sorts of different pit stops and road bumps along the way. It's very, very difficult, you know, to just be the guy who's selling every top and buying every bottom. And there's tax consequences to that as well. You know, I've been learning a lot about taxes. I've been working really closely with token tax over the past couple weeks, which is not necessarily, you know, something anybody wants to hear about or talk about, but, you know, it's something that you have to talk about. But the idea here, you know, as a holder is to just survive, and to hope that, you know, the party's not over, to hope that, you know, we end up okay. And that's the real mission here. So, you know, as we continue to move forward, as we continue to evaluate where we are, you know, you just have to keep in mind that, you know, there are going to be little humps along the way. You know, people are going to have bad days. You know, I talk about a lot the concept of leverage and how I just think leverage is terrible. You know, for 99% of the people watching this, leverage is not something you want to be exposed to. Leverage is not something you want in your life. Now, guys, you know, don't get me wrong. There's no feeling in the world like levering up and, you know, when you've got 100 grand and now all of a sudden you've got $1 million worth of buying power, and, you know, on the way up, if you're right, or on the way down, if you're right, it can feel really, really good. But if leverage was easy, it wouldn't be something that, you know, if leverage was easy, like it wouldn't even make fucking sense, is what I'm trying to say. Like, leverage is not easy. You know, we can be really degenerate on these shitcoins and we can get away with it. You know, I don't have to be perfect on my timing for shitcoins. You know, I just have to have strong hands, you know, and the market has to be right for what I'm doing. You know, with leverage, you've got to be perfect. You've got to have these perfect entries, and you've got to keep an eye on your risk. You know, and you've got to keep an eye on your margin. You got to make sure you don't over leverage. I mean, leverage can really fuck you up really fast. And I think leverage, even more so than altcoins, lends itself towards people using it and being successful, and then they get this false misconception of like, hey, that was really fucking easy. You know, that was too easy. I just made all this money. You know, you see these guys on Twitter that, you know, I turned $2,000 into $1 million in a month. You know, join my paid group or follow me. You know, I'm a genius. Well, you know, you're not a fucking genius, bro, for one. You got very lucky. You were at the right time in the right place. You just so happened to enter at a time to where you didn't get liquidated. You know, to turn 2,000 into $1 million in 1 month, you've got to really be putting on big leverage and really be accepting a lot of risks on the way up. You know, and there was definitely, if somebody was able to do that, there's definitely some lottery wins in there. And maybe it is coupled with a little skill, you know, because it's not as simple as just, oh, I blind longed 100x and, you know, I made money. But the point here is that leverage can be a blessing, but leverage can also be a curse. And, you know, and I'm sure there's people watching right now that have been liquidated. I'm sure there's people watching right now that, you know, they thought they were going to make it. You know, maybe you worked your way up to $40,000, $50,000 in your account. You know, hey, if this bull market keeps going, you know, if I can keep performing, then, you know, I'm going to have $500,000. I'll be a millionaire. But the unfortunate thing with leverage is, you know, when the market decides to take back some of what it's given, and you're in this long only, up only mentality to where every 10% dip, you know, you've been buying it on 50x and you've been a winner. And then you've got a situation like today, you know, where we pulled back 23, 24% in a very, very short period of time. You know, we see $4 billion in liquidations, and you have to think, you know, of just how many people out there lost their chance to make it in this bull market. And that includes some people that have waited around as long as we have for this shit, you know, that have waited for this moment. You don't need leverage to make it. You don't, you know, shitcoins are leverage, but you can get rugged, but you can't get liquidated, which is something that's amazing. You know, I've got bags that are down 50% from highs, and, you know, I'm not liquidated on them. That's the thing. I've still got my full position intact, and in some cases, even more than my full position, because I've been farming and, you know, things like that. And does it hurt, you know, when I look at MTA, for example, and MTA is drawn down 50%? Like, fuck yeah, it does. Like, come on. You know, it sucks seeing that. But the thing is I haven't blown my chance to make it. I still have that opportunity. You know, that's still there for me. Now, interestingly enough, and I don't, you know, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see the future. I know just as much as you guys know, you know, when it comes to what is next. You know, I feel like this is an excellent buy, you know, for a lot of these altcoins. I feel like that. And I have evidence to suggest that. But I could very well be wrong, you know, and that's something I want everybody to remember moving forward is even the best people are wrong, you know, and sometimes often, you know, I'm certainly wrong often. You know, if I had been 100% right, you know, maybe I would have, instead of only selling, you know, a third of my rook at like $800, maybe I would have sold all of it at $800, and, you know, maybe I'd be rebuying it all right now. You know, in a sense, that was wrong, you know, for just taking that partial, but it's only wrong in retrospect. You know, moving from high risk to low risk is something that I've talked about a lot, and because of that, I've been able to outperform altcoins for the month of February. If you look at all altcoins, essentially, the vast majority, you know, we're seeing maybe up to 50% retracements from their highs. Aave is a great example. And Aave is a great example as well because Aave was an outlier, you know, when these altcoins were going up. You know, Aave went up harder than any other altcoin. It doesn't matter what you were in. If you were in Aave, you know, you outperformed. But, you know, we're looking at Aave now, and you've got to think, you know, well, when I'm looking at Aave, it's down 50% from highs in a very short period of time. So there's actually people out there with super Aave heavy portfolios that are looking at their portfolio numbers right now and are going, holy shit, you know, I'm down 50%. You know, me personally, because of moving from high risk to low risk, you know, because I've shifted that risk, I've been able to limit my drawdown to just over 20% right now. You know, which still is shit. You know, nobody wants to draw down 20%. You know, it's definitely something that's not fun. But it's not drawn down 50%. So right now is, in my opinion, a fantastic time to reevaluate your holdings. You know, see what's strong, see what's on support levels, to look at development progress, you know, see what's being built, see what's coming, what kind of catalysts do we have on the way, and to position yourself to take advantage of this next leg should a next leg present itself. Now, interestingly enough, the timeline of this altcoin cycle is following the 2017 timeline almost to a T. And this is something we talked about in previous streams as well. You know, when we look back at a lot of these altcoins in early 2017, you know, I would assume towards the end of the year, people were tax loss harvesting and things like that. You know, that was really the capitulation event. And then we have these recoveries in the month of January leading into early February on these altcoins, where just about everything rallied a solid 3-4x. You know, looking back on those days, you know, I still remember that moment, and I still remember thinking to myself, you know, holy fuck, I'm really scarred from like 2016 and the drawdown that I ate. I'm really scarred from missing out. You know, I'm really scarred from previous bear markets. Like, is this it? Should I sell? And things pulled back about 50%, you know, from those highs they made in early January. Or early February, my bad. So the interesting thing here is that we had the same shit. We had capitulation at the end of December. Okay. We rallied from early January to early February, and we pulled back since then. And we're at about that 50% line right now. So where if this were 2017 repeating itself, you know, this is like the max pain right now. You know, this is the suckers rally. This is the moment where the strength of your hands and the strength of your conviction is going to be tested, and is being tested. You know, I'm certainly being tested right now. You know, when I look at this market and, you know, I understand the tax consequences that I've created for myself, and, you know, I understand that, you know, if I just took what I had and walked right now, I wouldn't be where I wanted to be in life, but I'd definitely be really far ahead. It's important to ask yourself those questions, you know, and to really think about this and think, you know, moving forward, am I going to bet that we're following the 2017 timeline and that, you know, March is going to be a really, really fantastic month, and maybe April and May as well? Or do I think that, you know, hey, this was fun, the party's over? You know, is it GG here? So that's definitely something to consider. And then there's all sorts of different macroeconomic factors. You know, some people feel like the stock market's super heavy. You know, unfortunately, Bitcoin, crypto are terrible hedge assets. So, you know, if the entire market goes risk off, you know, it could really put a damper on our cycle, just due to how correlated we are. You know, bullish things, we've got the Bitfinex Tether ruling that just happened. They didn't have to admit any guilt on that. There was no evidence of any funny business found with Tether. So, you know, it's good to put that to rest after so long. In my opinion, that's extremely bullish news from a regulatory standpoint, and just for the health of crypto in general. You know, if there's something was fucked with Tether, you know, and they did find evidence of wrongdoing there, you know, that'd be very bad for crypto, in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see how the market reacts to this news, how the market prices this in. You know, we've had this big sell-off recently, and you know, the real question here is, how long does Bitcoin cool off? I do think Bitcoin cooling off here for a bit, you know, will give altcoins a chance to shine a bit. You know, we are seeing some early signs of reversal on Ethereum versus Bitcoin, you know, which is exactly what we want to be seeing right now. So right now, it's kind of like a nut up or shut up, you know. Are you going to double down on your convictions, or are you going to take what you have now, which is probably a couple of 100% from where you were just a month ago, and are you going to walk with it? Are you going to de-risk that? And that's not a decision I can make for you, you know. Of course, this is something that I've had to decide for myself, you know. And personally, I'm not here to just make a couple of 100%, you know. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel here. You know, I know that if the market's able to rally from here and get its shit together, which I think there's a high probability of that happening, that, you know, I'll be able to set out and achieve the goal that I originally set out to achieve. which is to have some degree of financial independence and through the generation of income and assets that aren't cryptocurrency. It's a tough time right now, though, and it's a time where hard decisions have to be made. And when you're making these decisions, I would definitely factor in how much you could change your life right now with the amount of money that you have. And then think about that amount of money that you have right now and divide it by 2. Take out the money you owe on taxes from last year and think to yourself, damn, is that still enough money to change my life in some way? We've talked about this in the past. Change your life can just be your bills on auto pay or your fucking student loans paid or whatever. But really start to think, if I lost 50% of what I have right now, would that impact my life in some kind of adverse fashion? Other than, of course, me being like, fuck, I should have sold. Would that take some kind of opportunity off the table for me that could really make a difference if I acted now? Because like I said, the reality is, who fucking knows what's coming next? I feel like it's on bottom, but can we go another 50% to the downside? Yeah, we can. 100%. So everybody be mindful on that. That's enough psychology talk. I am actually going to, because we're going to be producing more content, we're going to try to keep church a little bit shorter, maybe in the hour to an hour and a half region at the max. Shooting for an hour will extend to an hour and a half rather than the 2-hour plus streams. We got a lot to cover today. We're going to look at some charts. I also wanted to present some evidence to the thesis that we are repeating 2017. Remember, we do have potential Biden bucks on the way and further printing by the Fed. So definitely some bullish things for altcoins, coming up. Funny enough, it's something I talked about on Twitter. I was joking, but I was also serious. Whenever there's some big push on crypto Twitter to change your profile picture to something, it's always the top. And this goes back to Pepe's, Bogdanov's, Laser Eyes. It doesn't matter what it is, but without fail, for whatever reason, that event is kind of indicative of a euphoric state, I guess, and when the conditions are such that everybody will actually get on board with, hey, I'm going to have laser eyes now or something like that. And that ended up being a top, for us too. And of course, you can blame whoever you want. You can blame the laser eyes. You can blame Elon Musk saying that Bitcoin is too expensive. You can blame Tai Lopez. The reality of the situation here is that, there's really no specific reason for this top other than some people decided that, hey, I'm in enough profit to sell. I'm going to take some off the table. I mean, Bitcoin really has just been going straight the fuck up. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this over to the desktop screen here. Oh. And we can go ahead and look at some charts. Let's see here. Background removal. I want to start off and ooh, yeah, that's brutal. We're definitely seeing some major dumpage here. I'm going to start off by having a look at Bitcoin. Give me just a second. I'm moving my Periscope window over. The dog's got a fucking bone. The dog's just being annoying because our housekeeper is here. Okay. Bitcoin US dollar perpetual inverse swap contract. I've always charted on BitMEX for perps. Maybe that's not the right thing to do anymore, but this is just the chart that I've been looking at for a long time. And now what we're looking at, and typically on any kind of violent up thrust or any kind of violent down thrust, we're going to look for 3 pushes here to really determine, when the pain is going to be over. And it does look like we are on that 3rd push right now. Now I do have this Gann line drawn here, from this fan, which I've extended from the beginning of this bull run, that is early March of 2020. And you can see that this Gann line did act as resistance here this 1-to-1 line. And I would imagine that it will also act as support here in this instance. So looking at this, we can actually see that Bitcoin is almost dumped all the way down to this GAN line already. And it definitely could extend past this GAN line just a bit. But the GAN line here is at $44,000. So I'm going to be watching $44,000 as kind of a stronghold for Bitcoin here. We really want to see this level respected. We really want to see some kind of bounce. We can also think about this in terms of just how much it's pulled back. I say on Twitter, things like PV, all that means is peak to valley. When you look at the top and then the bottom of a move, how much is it actually retraced? And right now we can see, this has been about a 23% pullback. A lot of times on significant pullbacks, we'll see that full 30%. If we did get that full 30%, there's definitely some confluence here. Not only do we have the GAN line around this area, but we also have confluence from this as well, and that would make a lot of sense. For an area that there would be significant demand for Bitcoin. I would highly doubt that the music's over. When you do have so many institutions that are, basically in line to buy more Bitcoin. Sailors still raising money to buy more Bitcoin, like mad. So this area, the $40,000 area, does make a lot of sense. Not only is it a 30% peak to valley move, which is what a lot of people are going to be looking for, for a fantastic entry, for a buy the dip. We do have this confluence between, a potential support resistance flip in this zone, and the GAN line as well. So that's something I'm keeping my eye on. And when we go down to the lower time frames, a move down into this region, down here, would complete that kind of idea that I was discussing of 3 pushes to the downside. So 1, 2, 3. Potentially. Now, that's not the only way, this can play out, of course. There's definitely other things that can happen here. One of those being that the bottom is in. We found support around this region. If we come back and we look at some of the previous dumps, let's just check this out. You can see that this move before, we had, or before we actually, launched up, was about 21% to the downside. And then when we look at this move here, we can see that, this move was about 26% to the downside. So, we're looking at another violent dump situation. It's been the first one that we've seen in a while, so of course people are a little on edge. But, looking at this move, it's right in line with the other moves that we saw previously, that were able to be, retraced, that we were able to come back from. So regardless of how far this goes down, whether it actually goes for 40, to 41K, whether this is the bottom here. Hush, that's enough. Lay down. Lay down. I'm sorry, guys, this dog is so bad. Regardless of what happens, I do believe that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And around this area, no matter where it is, somewhere in here, we're going to see, hopefully, buyers step in, and we're going to have a really, really strong reaction, a nice bounce to the upside. We can look at higher time frame candles as well to look for signs of exhaustion. So far, I really like the 12-hour as an intermediate high time frame. So far, this really isn't looking like much of a reversal. If anything, it's looking like people reshorted here. You can see this long wick to the downside. And I'll just extend this. So this long wick to the downside, a lot of people went long again on this pin bar because of how significantly this downside move was rejected. But we're actually putting those people in a position of pain right now. We've continued down, and you can see where the wick came to right here. And you can also see where this upside wick came to as well. So, you know, there was an area somewhere in here where people decided that, you know, we're going to reshort as well. There was an area of supply in this region. Now, going back and looking at Bitcoin from, you know, a historical perspective, and I've actually got the Hedgic versus Ethereum chart up here, and, you know, we'll take a look at what I'm in, because I know a lot of you guys are in those, and we'll look at the charts and we'll see if anything needs to be done or if everything looks good in just a moment. But I want to look at the all-time history for Bitcoin, and just think about, you know, some of the moves that we've already seen. And here we go right here. You see that concept of this 31% in this instance, peak to valley move. This was on the top in early January. Now, one thing that I want to note, what were altcoins doing beginning early January, like January the 8th? You know, that's when altcoins really started to rally. And then also, let's consider how long, you know, all things being equal, and I've got a tool here that'll actually allow me to do date and price range. So we had, let's just call this like the end of the turmoil for Bitcoin. I got to turn this snap tool off. But that was about 20 days, right, in drawdown, and it took just a little bit more time, you know, for Bitcoin to actually reverse and start to the upside again. But all things being equal here, and they rarely are, remember. You know, we could be witnessing something like this. And right now, the, you know, altcoins are selling off because they are up, and altcoins are selling off just as an initial reaction to Bitcoin retracing. But I would imagine that, you know, Bitcoin pulling back here is going to open the doors for these altcoins to run. Now, we've seen we have a precedent for this cycle for a 30% peak to valley move. And let's just take a look at some of these other moves. Go to price range. So here we did about 20%, you know, and that's possible as well. You know, I do think that we're going to go deeper on that. When we actually come back and we look at 2017, you know, you can see that what's actually happening right now is pretty commonplace. And, you know, back then we didn't have, you know, the level of liquidity that we have now, but, you know, we're looking right here at a 40% peak to valley move, a 36% peak to valley move, another 32% peak to valley move. And, you know, just structurally, you know, Bitcoin does kind of look similar to this right here. So maybe, you know, we've got one grand push after this, you know, September through December here. Maybe not, though. It's very difficult to compare, you know, the past to what's actually going on right now, and to act like the same thing is going to happen again. You know, really the point I'm trying to make here is that when we look at Bitcoin and we look at just how much it's pulled back, there's nothing out of the ordinary going on here. Bitcoin's just doing what it does, what it's been known to do. So breathe easy. There's no reason for panic yet. You know what would really concern me here, and we haven't seen a peak to valley move on this greater than 30%. But one thing that would really be cause for concern, in my opinion, would be some kind of move beyond 40%, because the biggest drawdowns in 2017 were 40%. And once again, we're in a lot different environment now. You know, we've got institutional buyers. There's almost infinite bid on these dips, especially when the dips get really ugly. You know, a lot of buyers are there. They're looking for that value buy. They're looking to step in. A 40% retracement on this move would put us somewhere in the $35,000, $34,000 range. And even that would still be within the realm of bullish continuation for Bitcoin. So really, right now, the point I'm trying to make is there's really no reason to sweat this. There's no reason to be nervous here. Does it suck looking at your portfolio tracker app right now and being like, oh my God, you know, I'm down a lot of money? Yeah. But as long as you aren't levered up and, you know, as long as you aren't being irresponsible, the odds are that you're going to survive this. And the odds are that, you know, it's sometime in March, maybe April, you'll be pushing those portfolio all-time highs again, you know, God willing. So let's have a look at Ethereum versus Bitcoin. You know, of course, this is what we are going to be paying attention to in regards for an alt season. And when we are looking at Ethereum versus Bitcoin, it's really just been straight down here. And you look at when this actually started pulling back versus Bitcoin, and that's the exact time when most altcoins really started to lose strength as well. And you see this was maybe February the 8th. So the timeline actually adds up identically, you know, with what we saw in 2017, you know, which is super interesting. And that was, let me just go ahead and pull up CoinTrader Pro here. And you guys don't have to take my word for it. You know, you can just look on the fucking chart here. So, you know, here we're looking at Decred from 2017. You can see that, you know, the rally began early January, much like a lot of the rallies we're seeing right now in altcoins. And the rally began to pull back, what do you know, after the first week of February, which is exactly what we've just seen here. Now, this is a logarithmic scale chart, so keep that in mind. But peak to valley here, we pulled back on Decred about 50%. Okay? So I'm looking at similar timelines on some things here. For example, Aave is a great example of this. Now, Aave began its run, you know, a lot earlier than a lot of things. But you'll notice here, when did Aave really start kicking ass? Well, it was around January 8th, 9th, and 10th, right? And what exactly was going on, you know, when Aave was doing this in the Bitcoin world? Well, Bitcoin was finally pulling back. And notice that this initial pullback wave, right? This initial downside on Bitcoin, we finally kind of bounced from that, and that's what kicked alts off. Around January the 11th, 12th. And you can see here with Aave that around January 12th, 11th is exactly when Aave really started performing. Now, this concept of three pushes, once again, is reflected on this chart, where you see that Aave really had three main pushes. 1, 2, 3, right? And that third push ended up being the top. So just testament to the fact that, you know, for upside and downside, if you really want to be an effective rotator, keep this three pushes concept in mind. If you are on the third push, it is likely, no matter what your multiple is, it is likely that that's probably a good time to go ahead and rotate a little bit of that risk from a higher risk to a lower risk. And that lower risk could mean something that isn't on push number 3 yet, or it could mean Tether or Bitcoin or whatever you want to make it. But looking at Aave once again, we're seeing this exact same thing play out that we saw on Decred. And now this is a linear scale, okay? So I'm going to put Decred on the linear scale just so it's easier for your brains to kind of make this comparison. And maybe to feel, put yourself in the shoes of an altcoin holder back in the time when this shit was going on. So there were a lot of people at this moment, you know, myself included, that were wondering if the party was over. You know, little did we know that the real party was just about to begin, and there was a lot of upside left on the table for us. But once again, when we're considering these timelines and the actual dates of when this shit happened, It is super interesting. Okay, so actually, this is what I want to compare to Aave right now. And of course, ignore this. It's not 100% similar. But look, we're seeing starting, really January 11th, January 12th, we really started to boogie here, and we saw sick gains. So let's look from this bottom here on January the 18th to the top, early February. We saw 300% upside. Now, when I look at Aave around the same time frame, to the exact top, that's about 400% upside. And after that occurred, Decred then proceeded to retrace about 51.5%. And the bottom of this move was about the 22nd of February. That's when that full 51% retracement was realized. Okay, so when did we start pulling back? Let me go back to this. We started pulling back maybe February 5th. Okay, so let's look at Aave. And here's February 5th, right? Which is pretty much the top on Aave. We had this little tiny bear div up here that formed a little extra, oomph to what was going on here. But around early February was the top. And now we're looking at a situation where, once again, it's the 23rd of February here, okay? Decred was retraced around 50%, 51% from that high it made early February. And now we're looking at Aave, which is retraced about 51.5% peak to valley from that exact high early February. And then I look at Decred again, and I see that the bottom for this move, right, before we had a bounce, before we had some relief, was around February 22nd, 23rd, somewhere in there, we started seeing a bounce on altcoins. We ended up forming this higher low here, but if the timeline continues to follow 2017, which is truly up in the air, guys, I don't know if this is pure coincidence or this is some kind of alpha we're onto, but it's something I'm really, really keeping a close eye on, because if we start to see major, good bounces on altcoins, and maybe for Aave, it looks something like this. If we start to see these nice bounces on altcoins, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day, then I think that's further evidence that supports that this timeline that we're seeing now is exactly the same timeline that we saw in 2017. Now, the good news, if fingers crossed that ends up being the case here, the good news here is that we have really, really exciting times ahead of us. And you can see here from this bottom just how hard, these alt markets really rallied. So right now, this is where you are. At the top on Decred, and I'll just draw it to the bottom of the move, okay? At the top on Decred, people were up, a solid 750%-ish. When I want to look at Aave, and I look, from the bottom to the top of Aave, it's a little bit more, right? It's about 2,000%. But how much is it actually up, in this timeline of early January till now to the top? That's about 600%, right? And just like 2017, we had people out here saying that I've made way too much money, I'm not worthy of this much money, the party's definitely over. Coming back to Decred, you can imagine the similar emotions people were feeling. This is early January to the top, around 650%, okay? Around 600%. So people were looking at this right here in this moment, early February, with scars from the bear market, feeling the same way. All right, boys, that was a wonderful alt season. Back it up, party's over. But look at this. Yeah, we pull back 50%, but from this 50% pullback, from this bottom, And of course, there's road bumps along the way. To the top, we see another around 2,500% here on Decred. And this is representative of a true bubble. You know, when we want to talk about real euphoria and what real euphoria feels like, this is exactly what real euphoria feels like. And that's what could be on the table for us. So what would Aave look like if we continue to kind of match these timelines? I think that that's a fun question to ask. You know, we can draw from what's potentially the bottom here. You know, and we could look at through June. And I'm gonna have to switch just to log. What are we looking at here? Around 2,600. I mean, that could put Aave at something as ridiculous as like $7,000. And trust me, like that, something like that is true euphoria. To where something is absolutely absurdly overpriced relative to what it should be. You know, I feel like a lot of these rallies right now, we're just kind of making up for lost ground, you know? I think some of these DeFi protocols, you know, some of these markets became undervalued. And it's not to even say that, you know, Aave is going to follow this exact Decred path. Aave's already up quite a bit. The main point that I'm trying to make here is that when I look at something like this and then you look at, you know, think about people right here. We're saying the same kind of shit about Decred in this moment, you know. Wow, you know, could you have even imagined, switch this to a log scale just to make it a little easier to visualize. Could you have even imagined at this moment that this was in your future? No, at this moment, you're in full Wojak mode. You're worried that you're gonna lose everything. And this actual rally existed, it looks like from the end of February, you know, around February 22nd. And then we have a nice little peak here, 122 days later. So what if we are repeating this timeline and we are about to see altcoins rally for maybe 120 days? That puts alt season extending all the way towards the end of June, you know, which would be fantastic, right? The question though is this hopium? Maybe. But it is really interesting so far to look at the timelines on these things and to see, I mean, almost to the date, to the percentage of how much these things have gone up and down. To see 2017 repeating itself to the extent that it is now. It's really interesting. It's certainly something that's worth keeping your eye on. Okay. So now what we're gonna do next is we are gonna take a look at different things that I'm in. You know, we're gonna go over my positions right now. We're gonna look at some of these charts. If I am in anything that's low cap, we're not gonna talk about that. Just because, you know, the aim is not to have you buy these low cap things that are pulled back. We'll go ahead and start off with 88 MPH, you know, which is getting absolutely nuked right now. Super fun. It looks like this structure, you know, is actually some kind of distribution. You know, you can see that we broke down up here. And it's just been a roller coaster to the downside, you know, ever since, which is really disappointing to see because we actually kind of broke out right here and it got faded really, really hard. It got sold into. So the real question now becomes, okay, you know, let's start looking for levels where there is some kind of historical precedent. And then let's match those levels with fibs and, you know, maybe there will be some kind of confluence here. There we go. So we see here, you know, we've already blown past this 0.382. You know, we did see a reaction at this level, and there is confluence on the chart as well with this level. So you can see, you know, just over here that, you know, when we dumped right here, this was an area of supply when people just thought it was going to keep going up. So right now, the next level of interest for MPH is going to be around $69. That's going to represent a retracement back to the 0.236, which, you know, for a lot of these altcoins is literally the sweetest buy that you can possibly make. Now, we also have confluence here just from an SR perspective. And you can see right here, this right here, which was resistance, which was flipped to support, and then back to resistance again. So I would imagine on something like MPH, you know, that we will see continuation down into the $70 range ish. You know, there are going to be people here that are absolutely losing their fucking minds, that are getting extremely nervous, that are worried this is just going to dump forever. And there's also likely smart buyers who are going to step in at this level, and they are going to see what they can do about it. Now, let's look at top to bottom. Top to bottom, I mean, we are already retraced 64% on MPH in a very short period of time. That is from the that's in just 10 days. So this is quite an aggressive sell-off. I expect the bounce when it happens to be probably just as aggressive. Let's take a look at the MPH versus Ethereum chart. And this is just super unfortunate because, you know, we did try to break out right here again. And that was faded for whatever reason, which really sucks ass. And in terms of Ethereum, you know, I can throw my fibs on it right here. You know, we are even pushing past this 0.236 fib on Ethereum. And just from an SR perspective, the actual, you know, important area to consider here, in my opinion, is very clear. And that's this area, you know, which served as a shelf of demand for quite some time. You know, we saw multiple bounces at this level. When we eventually broke below this level, we were rejected once, twice, and then when we broke back above this level, you can see that SR flip happening again. Now, if you notice right here, versus Ethereum, MPH is coming into an area to where we have confluence between this channel right here. So there's diagonal support. You've got this horizontal support as well, which we can anticipate a reaction. So the downside versus Ethereum may be limited, meaning that what actually potentially drives MPH from a USD perspective down to the $70 range, if that's even able to happen, could be some bearish price action in terms of Ethereum. Now, looking at the Ethereum chart right now, you know, we do have a lot more time to cover in the hourly candle, but this higher low here would be really promising. And that would allow for a lot of alts to bounce. And if we see a lot of those alts bouncing and, you know, around February 22nd, February 23rd, you know, that's going to make me really fucking horny. Just because, like, what if, you know, it's alt season till June? You know, how crazy would that be? It's just something to, like I said, these are all just like hypothetical. Some of it's, you know, of course, a little optimistic. I do have an optimistic outlook. So, you know, that bias is very clear here. I just hope you understand that I do have that bias because I am a believer. You know, I'm sure there's other people that will act without a bias, but, you know, I act with a bias because I have a conviction. You know, I've got positions on. So looking at Ethereum, you know, it does look really nice because if Ethereum manages to bounce here with something like MPH on a potential support level versus Ethereum, then we could see a bounce on MPH as well, relative to the US dollar. So now's not the time to sell. You don't want to sell after a 50-60% drawdown. If you were really interested and you know, you were like, fuck this shit, you know, I'm out of here. The best advice that I think I can give you would be to wait for some kind of bounce here and then to fade that bounce and to sell in that bounce. I think you'll get more bang for your buck if you just have had enough, if you're ready to leave, you're ready to get the fuck out of here. Wait for that bounce, wait for that opportunity, okay? So let's take a look at some other shit. How about we check out Bancor, or BNT. Bancor is now my biggest position. Am super bullish on BNT. It does look right here like kind of a natural area for BNT from a US dollar perspective to retrace a little bit. You know, we don't quite have 3 pushes left, but notice when BNT trends versus the dollar, it trends very hard. BNT is extremely liquid and a lot of that supply is locked up. But one thing that BNT has going for it is the fact that BNT is potentially extremely undervalued relative to its competition. So just looking right here, you know, in areas of interest, you know, we do have this level, which, you know, worst case scenario, and it's interesting because BNT was kind of a late mover here, but worst case scenario, you know, maybe we pull back to something like $2.50 before proceeding to the upside. You know, best case scenario, of course, that's not something that happens here at all, just because there has been so much demand and because it is very strong versus Ethereum. It is very strong versus Bitcoin. And for something like this to happen, it would likely need a deeper retracement from Bitcoin and Ethereum, you know, which is something that I'm not quite sure we are going to get. So if we check out BNT versus BTC, and I don't know how this got all fucked up here. But if we are looking at something like BNT, you know, versus BTC, you can see here that we are at a point of interest. You know, there is resistance here, you know, which we need to conquer. You know, the real question is, are we able to break this resistance to the upside and you know, really see a strong move, which is something that can happen in an alt season. You know, this wedge, I don't know if it's a meme, if it's not a meme. I will say that it's really interesting, you know, when I'm looking at this, that this diagonal is acting as a point of resistance. When I'm looking at Bancor versus Bitcoin, in the past, when you see that Bancor runs versus Bitcoin, you can see that, you know, the uptrends typically are violent. You know, they're quite aggressive. Let's just look at some historical precedent here. You know, here we've done 345% versus BTC. You know, here it was 70% versus BTC. Here we did around 800% versus BTC. And here we are sitting at about 200% versus BTC. So there's definitely room to run on a versus BTC basis, which is something that'll be interesting to watch. For Bancor, I think my eyes and a lot of eyes are on this structure here and watching for BNT to break this diagonal to the upside, to retest this, you know, confirm that SR flip, and then potentially do some damage. Now we could also look at Bancor, you know, of course, versus Ethereum, and Bancor is very strong versus Ethereum. You can see here, I mean, this is the clear resistance level versus Ethereum. I'd really like to see Bancor Enterprise Discovery versus Ethereum. I think things could get pretty weird. We've got about a 2x before we actually get to this significant resistance level versus Ethereum. You know, of course, we're at some kind of intermediate resistance level right here. But above this line, you know, we could really see BNT have some, you know, some really interesting upside, you know, especially if Ethereum is managing to outperform Bitcoin at the time. If BNT is able to outperform Ethereum, then that'll just be icing on the cake, right? But BNT still looks super bullish. You know, we're looking here, this VWAP, volume weighted average price all time, on the Binance chart is acting as a resistance level, you know, as well as these other factors that are contributing to resistance. But the Willy is not in oversold territory. We do have upside momentum on high time frames, so I've got a high degree of confidence that this is going to continue. And Bancor is a fantastic position to enter if you need a lot of liquidity, because Bancor has no shortage of liquidity, and you can actually enter and exit an absolute monster bag for very, very little slippage. So even if Bancor does go 5x, you're never going to be asking yourself, holy fuck, how do I actually sell this without crashing the market? The liquidity's there. You're going to be able to get out. So let's go ahead and have a look at our favorite coin on this stream, and that is MT-AIDS, as some have coined it. MT-AIDS is quite the chart right here. If we are looking at it, and let me go ahead and move down to a daily time frame here. It's pretty clear, what actually has happened here. Versus Ethereum, MTA rallied. It hit this resistance level versus Ethereum, and it's been pulling back. Now, interestingly enough, MTA is now on a support level. And you can see this right here, we did have a rejection once we broke below this level, a swing failure point right here, a rejection at this level, another rejection at this level, another rejection at this level. We finally flipped the level and had this little nice SR flip right here. So we are sitting right on support for MTA versus Ethereum, which is something that's really interesting to see. When we come back to the upside, there's a lot of upside left to explore here. So it would be really nice to see MTA having a reaction at this level versus Ethereum, and conquering new highs. Maybe somewhere up in this range, which is versus Ethereum a 100% move. Maybe flipping this as support. And then, the dream would be coming back somewhere in this range. Now, versus the dollar, you can see that MTA has been quite unforgiving here. Really, really nice double bottom structure, of course, launched us. Now we are actually approaching this incredible buy area for a lot of things, and this 2.236 level. Right now it's definitely on a support level. So to get this full pullback, to actually get down into this area, I do expect that Ethereum would have to be the cause of that. We'd have to see Ethereum carry some of this momentum to the downside. But even then, timeline wise, if you look at this, once again, we're seeing early January up to here, and this one actually looks really similar to the Decred chart, when it all boils down to it, because we actually have this 2020, which just like Decred was just fucking dump city. We had this bottom, and from the actual bottom to the top, we had about 520% upside. So coming back and looking at Decred again, I am just seeing a lot of parallels here. It is in a lot of ways very similar. The daily, where the fuck did the chart go? Oh, it went all the way up here. Okay. So when you look at, MTA and then you look at Decred and you look, from the absolute bottom to the absolute top, Decred rallied about 777%, and then Decred pulled back, of course, about 51%, right? So looking at MTA, we're seeing a 520% rally. And then in early February, look, February 5th, February 12th, we're now seeing an actual 61% pullback, which is definitely quite brutal. So just something to keep an eye on. You know, this could definitely be a bottom candidate area for MTA. You know, there is reason to assume that this would be bottom. 60% retracement is quite brutal. But, you know, on something like MTA and a true bubble, if we were to rally super crazy, you know, even 1,500% from here through June, you know, somehow, some way, you know, there is a path to absolutely absurd gains here. But once again, the real question is are we following this timeline or are we not? Because if we aren't, you know, it's kind of back to the drawing board on that. Okay, so enough on MTA. Let's talk about Rook here for a second. Rook has just been getting absolutely bodied here, which kind of sucks. You know, having Rook on FTX ended up being an absolute curse, like it is for a lot of things. You know, we had this SR flip on Rook. You know, it tried to bounce here. For whatever reason, you know, Rook decided that it was going to break this level to the downside. So maybe what I'm thinking is this is kind of bull trap-ish. You know, this was an area to where, you know, people bought into Rook, but the ideal thing for Rook to have done, rather than to have broken out here, maybe would have just been to continue sideways here and continue to accumulate. And this is what I'm looking at versus Ethereum. You know, I do think this is something that could happen. We are coming into an area of demand versus Ethereum, like we have seen for so many different altcoins. So it's something to keep your eyes on. So looking at Rook versus the dollar here, we do have a bit of precedent from the last move. You know, Rook moved versus the dollar from the absolute bottom to the top, and it's honestly not even fair to do it from that. You know, we should probably say that the bottom is somewhere around here, because this is where the liquidity was added to Rook, and this is where people were able to actually to buy in at about 30 bucks, right? So about maybe 700% from that. And then when we look at this and we look to the top of this move, or maybe, you know, we could even extend this down, because I know some people that maybe got in around 20 bucks. It's similar in magnitude to the move that we saw, you know, way back here. You know, there's quite a bit of upside there, 1,000% versus the USD. And you can see once again that this started in early January, and we began pulling back the first or second week of February. And from the highs, Rook is actually retraced about 57-60% right here. You know, we are coming up on a potential area of demand for Rook versus the dollar, which is somewhere in this region. So I would be personally, you know, keeping my eyes on this area. You know, you can see that this was resistance. You can see how it was flipped to support and, you know, allowed us to capture additional upside here. You know, with Rook, if you were actually watching the parabola here, you know, we've got this right here, which, you know, can serve as maybe a worst case for us. But also on this parabolic advance, and it looks like, you know, this one broke super early. So let's just go ahead and get rid of that. You kind of do like that, right? You know, you do just see that this parabolic advance in particular, you know, was just broken to the downside. It's up 1,000% in a month, for fuck's sake. So, you know, a little bit of cool off is just something that's necessary. You know, does it suck seeing Rook nuking as hard as it is? Yeah, for sure. But I think maybe in the $300 range, you know, we'll see some significant support for Rook, you know, especially once again considering that we are kind of in an area of support against Ethereum, you know, which is what Rook is liquid against. So keep your eye on this area for Rook for a strong bounce, if not the bottom. And once again, you know, the bottom could be around this day if all of the timelines are adding up. You know, the market is kind of in full panic mode right now, which makes it extremely difficult to operate. Okay, so let's take a look at Hedgic. It looks like BNT is still extremely strong versus Bitcoin, you know, which I love seeing. It does look like Bitcoin versus the dollar is finding support here for now. Okay, so we are seeing this bounce. We are not out of the woods yet. I just want to clarify that, but keep your eye on this 12-hour time frame, you know, to see some sign of trend exhaustion here, some kind of pivot to where we can at least bounce and then, you know, at the worst case, de-risk on altcoins on the bounce. You know, Ethereum is looking quite good. 20 more minutes to close on the hourly, so we'll be monitoring that as well. I would imagine that the stream will still be going on by then. Okay, so let's see here. What else do we want to look at? Let's take a look at Hedgic now. For whatever reason, the Hedgic downturn is hurting people more than other shit I'm in, because out of anything that I'm in, I've had more people say, oh my god, Hedgic, you know, like, it hurts, like, what's going on? Now, looking at the Hedgic chart, you know, that doesn't make much sense to me. The Hedgic chart looks quite good. You know, we've got this channel that we're in versus Ethereum. Hedgic is primary liquid versus Ethereum, to my knowledge. And we were rejected here, of course. We were rejected here, of course. And we were rejected on this trend line. So we're coming back to the bottom of the channel. Hedgic is bouncing at the bottom of the channel. So that's pretty much exactly like what I'm wanting to see here. You know, what's in the realm of healthy for Hedgic. If I come look at Hedgic versus USD, and it says versus BUSD here, you can see that in a lot of these instances, and this is hopefully what we're going to be looking at today, in a lot of these instances, at some point, these candles all had bodies that were below this trend line, but actually wicked up. You know, we saw this yesterday to where, you know, at some point that candle body was below the trend line, but it wicked up. So versus the dollar, I'm really looking at Hedgic to have a strong bounce here, you know, to reclaim this channel. This is the VWAP on Hedgic right here, and you can see that this entire, you know, season since early January until now, which once again, interestingly enough, the top is early February and the bottom is early January, just like we saw in 2017. And from the top to where we are right now, we are at a 54% retracement from top to the absolute bottom, wick wise. So we've seen over and over again this volume weighted average price on Hedgic, you know, serve as an area of demand. We see it here, we see it here, we see it here. You know, we saw it here yesterday, and I would imagine we are going to see it here again today. So for Hedgic, I'm still bullish on Hedgic. You know, I think Hedgic looks good. You know, everything that I've looked at doesn't look like any reason to panic to me yet. And of course things can change. You know, I would definitely start to worry, you know, just because this is something that I am continuing to monitor, you know, and I would definitely start to worry a bit if maybe this candle closed below not only this lower trend line, but also this VWAP right here. And if you go add the VWAP to your chart, all you have to do to see the all-time VWAP is just go to your settings and change the anchor period. I think it's going to actually default to a session, which you can see there doesn't do us too much good. But if I could anchor it to the you know, month, for example, or in this case, I'm doing it to the decade because that accounts for all the price action showing here. You can see that the volume weighted average price is a really good indicator of what kind of trend we're on. On a downtrend, like we saw back here, it ended up being a really good place to short, right? And an uptrend, it ends up being a really good place to buy. So just keep that in mind. Looking at everything though, once again, you know, we are seeing some significant retracements. You know, we are seeing some pullbacks, of course, but I'm just not really seeing anything that I'm too concerned about. You know, am I in pain? Yeah, for sure. You know, nobody likes drawing down. You know, nobody likes feeling like that. Rook right here on that 0.382, you know, definitely a potential candidate for a bounce. We'll just have to see what happens. Yeah, I've got our random tasks RLZ levels drawn up here. You know, one of the interesting things about these moves is if you guys are following random tasks and looking at his streams, those RLZ levels are really cool. And these actual like downturns right here are mapping out potential targets for our next move, you know, just based on how hard this moves down. So, you know, a bounce from this region right here, if we did manage to bounce on that 0.382 of the entire move, you know, would set targets in motion in excess of $2,500 for Rook, you know, which is quite a bit of upside from here. You know, you can see these two targets respectively, 600% and 1,000%. So really the harder these things are pulling back right now, the harder they have a potential to spring from those moments. You know, I would highly doubt that we got our, you know, in most cases 4 or 5x and the party's just over and, you know, we're all gonna move on from that and you know, fuck, you should have sold, right? I would highly doubt that that's the world that we're living in, or, you know, or that's the situation that we're in right now. So once again, you know, just something to keep your eye on. Stay focused, stay alert, pay attention. You know, if you do have anything that's really strong right now, and if you do have anything that's really liquid, Bancor, for example, which is very strong, it could be a good opportunity for you to rotate from those things that aren't down 60% into a larger position of something that is down 50 or 60%. You know, that's a really good way to rebalance and optimize your returns, especially when we bounce. The harder something is dumped, the harder the bounce typically is. So just keep that in mind, you know, when you are trying to move forward from this, you are trying to decide what decisions to make. Right now, it could be a good opportunity as long as you don't really see any like fundamental reason, like, oh, this got hacked, or oh, the devs haven't posted in a week. As long as you don't see any like really standout reasoning behind why something is actually dumping, you know, it definitely could be a good idea to go ahead and get in there and snag some of these bargain basement prices, because the reality of the situation is, you know, when we're looking at something like Aave here, you know, if Aave has the potential and to go to, you know, even $1,000 from here, let's say in the low end, let's say it goes to $2,000 from here, you know, there's some real potential upside for you buying here at the $300 range. And you have to remember that, you know, at this point in time, I don't particularly like buying other people's multiples. And you don't really want to buy other people's multiples when those multiples are still strong. I mean, look what that would have gotten you if you bought Aave at $500. But there's nothing wrong with buying somebody else's multiple, buying something that's already up a lot. If there is a significant retracement, you know, that's a huge opportunity for you to get in there and to pick up something with the opportunity to bounce really hard. And the opportunity to do really well. So let's go have another look at the Ethereum chart. You know, once again, this hourly is shaping up really nicely. These blue bars are early entry bars, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there is a bottom, but it means that there could be a bottom. And if you're feeling ballsy, you know, you could step in here and get a really fantastic entry on something like Ethereum. When we move to the 4-hour timeline, you know, we can see that trends is absolutely still very bearish on Ethereum. You know, you've got this big kind of block forming down here, you know, which a lot of times is actually going to be a bottom or a top. You know, this could be accumulation down here. A really solid example of that exact kind of thing, I think, is on Ethereum versus Bitcoin. And when it's different than what we're looking at, you know, but all of these candles, patterns, structures, whatever, are just fractals of each other, you know, regardless of the time frame. But you're seeing this Ethereum versus Bitcoin top right here, and it looks very similar, right? Except for inverted to what we're actually looking at right now on the 4-hour time frame for Ethereum versus Bitcoin. We're actually seeing this kind of range established here. So if you're looking at this and you're wondering what's going to happen next, really what you can do is draw this range on Ethereum between really 1580 and 1450. So about a $130 range. And you can monitor which direction Ethereum breaks out of this range. But just looking at this and seeing, a very similar situation here, okay? I have a high degree of confidence. And look, and we can actually draw that range out right here. I have a high degree of confidence that this could be a potential bottom. And you can see with this range right here, we actually broke down on the range. And so that was the direction of the move. So Ethereum versus Bitcoin also is looking quite good here. We look on the daily, finally some kind of capitulation, something that could cause a potential bounce. We really want to see Ethereum continue to perform really, really strong today. Coming and looking at the 12-hour, I wouldn't exactly call this, an in the bag strong reversal yet. But just like when we saw the Ethereum shift or when we saw the momentum shift for Ethereum versus Bitcoin towards the end of February, and then we also saw a lot of these altcoins start retracing. We're also looking here at, what is this, February 22nd. We're also looking here or at a point to where if Ethereum decides that, hey, we are going to rally versus Bitcoin here, then, we are going to see bullish altcoins happen at the same time. So just something to keep your eyes on. Let's actually look at this on some higher time frames. Once again, the daily, it'd be really, really nice if we could get a close somewhere up here, like at 0.033, 0.034. That would, in my opinion, that would be an extremely clear sign of a reversal. Right now, here's the mean reversion area. This is that VWAP on Binance, Ethereum, Bitcoin. You can see that we did have a reaction at this level. So I would expect on any kind of bounce that we will likely find resistance at this level. Again, things really accelerated when we broke that. Moving into even higher time frames, you can see on the 3-day here, the Willy never actually moved into an embedded state. The 3-day still has, looks like 3 hours to close. We're going to get a new 3-day candle. So I do think that today, because we are getting this new 3-day candle today, today definitely could be a candidate for, potentially bottom. If you look back in the history of Ethereum versus Bitcoin, we see a lot of turbulence in this area, which is exactly what we're seeing now. A lot of turbulence, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of crazy shit. So this is something that, I'm also watching very closely. For all of this to happen, for all of this to play out, the king has to show some strength here versus BTC. And Ethereum's got to bounce here. And we've got to do some damage control. We've got to close this candle up. Now, the weekly candle hasn't gone red yet. If this weekly candle goes red on Ethereum versus Bitcoin, I'm not going to lie, I will be a little scared if that happens. And there's indications that, this price action is bearish. If you actually look here, you can see, a really, really clear bearish divergence, right? All that means is that, on the second push, we went to a higher high, but there was a lack of buyers relative to the first push. We had waning momentum here. And you can see versus Bitcoin, right, from the high to now, we are looking at about a 34% peak to valley. Now, let's look at some of the other retracements. Right here, we saw 43%. Right here, we saw around 30%. And right here, we saw around Yeah, we saw around 26%. So this move right now is in the realm of what makes sense. It's not anything I would say that's irregular at this point, anything that's necessarily a cause for concern. Now, granted, this is different times. This is during a downtrend, but you can also see Ethereum versus Bitcoin here with 28%, Ethereum versus Bitcoin here with 38%. So regardless of what the trend was, what the macro is, somewhere in that 30 to 40% range pullback versus Bitcoin seems to be something that's pretty common, before we see a really, really nice reversion after a move like that. There's something that's really common. Now we're going to keep this stream going for the next 6 minutes at least. I think I am going to take this time to field some questions. There's certainly a lot of things now where we're seeing this 3 pushes concept played out. One of these, a perfect example of this would be Rook. I'm just going to go ahead and clear everything off the chart. But we have your 1, 2, 3. And this could be the potential end. I do have this VWAP right here. And just like Hedgic, you can see that, this VWAP on Rook is important. It acted as resistance here. In a sense, it acted as resistance here. We had sellers below the VWAP. So any kind of reversion, I'd be looking for a really strong move that, came back into this area somewhere that tested the VWAP. We all know Rook is extremely volatile, which is something that I'm actually hoping to address, through having Rook. We've gotten it whitelisted on Bancor, which means that before there's an official staking solution from Rook, from Keeper DAO, you're able to go provide one single-sided liquidity on Bancor.network. You're able to get those fees from trading on Bancor, and you're able to get some kind of yield with 100% impermanent loss protection after 100 days on your Rook. So now we finally have some way to use your Rook, which is fantastic. And that some way to use your Rook doesn't require you to be the other side of the LP and have exposure to whatever else is going on. Now, the next phase of this, which is something that will actually pass very soon, and we can actually look at Bancor right here. Let's just see. Go to Bancor.network, and we're going to have a look at the voting status. So for this actual vote to pass, we need to reach 20% quorum, which means that we have 20% participation in the vote itself. You can see here that this proposal increases the co-investment limit on Rook to 1 million BNT. What that actually means, and there's only 18 hours left on this, okay? So in 18 hours, after 18 hours, this is going to go live tomorrow. What this actually means is that the Bancor protocol itself is going to be willing to mint up to 1 million BNT to match with single-sided Rook deposits. So that's going to open the door for, let's assume BNT is $5. That's going to open the door for $5 million of Rook to be deposited on Bancor and matched up to BNT liquidity, which is going to be fantastic because that $5 million alone, will bring our total to somewhere in the, I'd say maybe $12 million range for liquidity. And we have lower fees on this Bancor pool than Uniswap. So if the liquidity is similar to the liquidity on Uniswap, we're going to start seeing a lot of traffic here. We're going to get a lot of volume here, and that should provide a nice APR for us as Rook holders, in addition to reducing volatility in the Rook market, which, volatility, everybody knows Rook has been volatile as a motherfucker, which really sucks ass. And then the next phase for this is actually putting to vote liquidity mining rewards after we can show Bancor, and this is a big if, that, hey, the Rook community is here, we want to participate in this, we want to provide liquidity, and we want to generate fees on the Bancor platform. So we've got about 2 minutes left. Everything's still looking quite good here. Let's go ahead and go back to this hourly. once again, you know, we're still looking quite good here on this hourly. Really strong hourly candle, completely engulfing the last hourly. Then again, we did have a strong candle here as well. We really want to be focused on this range that we're in, and our ability to break above this range. From a peak to valley standpoint, Ethereum has had quite a pullback versus Bitcoin. Peak to valley, we're looking at already about a 33%, which in my opinion is a good case to be made for this being the actual bottom on Ethereum. I've got a really hard time believing that we finally broke all-time highs to only go to $2,000. It just sounds a little wild to me. I think Ethereum has a lot of room to run. And of course, there's all these different narratives now, you know, of, oh, you know, alt season on Ethereum is not feasible. You know, alt season's not going to happen. The fees are too high. You know, blah, blah, blah. I disagree with those. You know, I think Ethereum is still the king. It's really nice to see options for smaller accounts out there, like Binance Smart Chain, like Solana. It's probably alpha to get on Solana early and take advantage of new shit that's launching there. You know, there's a good shot it'll be listed on FTX, you know, while it's still low instead of when it's high. A good shot that it can really pump from there. Excuse me, and Solana is really cheap too. So fantastic closing our hourly. You know, we can already see that the first impulse on this next hourly, you know, the first direction it moved in was to the upside. So that's also promising as well. In many cases, the way a candle opens, you know, that first tick, that first direction it pushes in is going to be the direction for the remainder of the candle. So keeping my eyes on this, you know, would really like to see some strength from Ethereum moving into the close, and that could provide us with some much needed relief for a lot of these altcoin bags. But once again, everybody be safe out there. What I want you to do now is to evaluate and really think about the points that I made at the beginning of the stream. You really want to start thinking, you know, do I walk right now, or do I take the risk and leave this risk on the table? Do I keep my exposure to gain potential insane gains over the next 3 months? Or, hey, I can really change my fucking life right now. I can pay off my mortgage. I can do this and that. At the end of the day, I can't really complain. But what if I drew down 50% and now I couldn't pay off my mortgage and now I couldn't pay off my student loans? Well, I could never forgive myself, right? So that's just something to think about, something to keep in mind. If you are going to be a seller here, make sure you sell on the bounce. Do not sell these 50, 60% drawdowns. I hate to say it, but you will be selling the bottom. You aren't going to be able to forgive yourself. You know, a lot of people here, in my opinion, are about to find out what selling too early feels like in an alt season. And these same people are just going to be fuel to the fire on the way up. So guys, that is everything I have for today. And for those of you saying I don't care about Badger, I hope you do understand that I am spearheading an initiative to have BBadger and BDig on Bancor with huge co-investment limits and liquidity mining rewards. And if that passes, you're going to be able to stake your Badger, get yield on that shit, compound it automatically, and then take your BBadger or BDig, if you're staking your dig, and provide that as single-sided liquidity on Bancor with impermanent loss protection, make pool fees from the arbitrage between BDig and BBadger to Badger and Dig, okay? We're going to set the pool fee at 1% if it passes, and also we're going to give you liquidity mining rewards on top of that. So we're talking about something that I'm trying to push forward for the Badger community. That's fucking awesome, okay? So before anybody gets upset that, you know, I sold a lot of my Badger around 70, 80 bucks, just keep that in mind that I actually do still have Badger and that I am doing things for the Badger community, even to this day. Badger was good to me. It still is good to me, and I'm going to continue to be good to Badger. So you guys keep your eyes on that. If you want to actually look at the votes, see how it's going, you can go to bancor.network. You can click on vote. When you come and look at the open proposals, this is the new proposal. For this proposal to pass, we are going to have to hit 40% quorum. So if you guys are in the Badger community, please get the word out. You know, talk to people about this. We need more people to vote on this. It doesn't matter that we have 20% against. All we need is 40% participation. This guy that said no actually helped us out. We need 40% participation, and we need a majority, and this proposal can go through, and that can be actually something that's really, really bullish. Okay, so keep that in mind. Keep your eyes on that. That's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for coming. I will see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. CST for the DeltaFi show with Rob Levy, Dan Gunsberg, Random Task, and myself. So until next time, adios.